Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here, back with another Market Watch episode. So in today's episode, we're covering a few more cards that we've seen trending on the market over the last week or so. Now, just so that you guys do know, I am filming this episode a couple days in advance, so we might see a little bit of price changes since then. But for the most part, things that I'm discussing here, we're expecting the prices to not fluctuate too rapidly, or if we do expect some, I'll mention that in the specific card section. But yeah, some of these are going to be related to the meta right now and how it's evolving, while others are cards to just keep an eye on because they're expected to have an impact in the near future. Let's get started. Alright, kicking things off, we have Red Nova. So this is a pretty obscure card. It's something that has never seen any sort of competitive play before, but looks to be a useful card in the new Killer Toon strategy, which Japan just got and we should be getting in the next side set, Phantom Revengers. So the new strategy is a synchro based strategy where you're allowed to synchro summon using monsters from your hand. Red Nova is a level 1 tuner, but it has an effect where if it's sent to the graveyard as synchro material, where 2 or more tuners are used, you special summon a Fire Fiend monster from your deck in defense position. Now, Killer Toon is a weird synchro deck because the synchros all require all of the materials to be tuners, but this means that you can synchro with Red Nova in your hand and trigger its effect to special summon a body out of the deck, and it turns out that one of the Killer Toon main deck monsters happens to be a Fire Fiend. So naturally, players are freaking out because of how potentially useful this card could be. However, Red Nova is one of the more obscure cards in the game, so it saw some absolutely crazy price jumps. It was originally a secret rare in the 3rd Dragons of Legend set, a set that actually didn't have any playable cards in it, aside from like a reprint of Soul Charge. The secrets used to be like 50 cents. They're now up to between $15 and $18 each. Its only other printing is the common version from the Dragons of Legend Complete series, another set that was hardly opened. They were basically bulk before, but they're now up to around $7 per copy as well. Now, normally when an obscure card goes up, I'll have a few copies myself, but with this one, the sets were so scarcely opened I barely found any at all. Definitely double check to see if you have extras of this card lying around and try to offload them as soon as you can, since I believe there's a good chance that a card like this will be reprinted in Phantom Revengers itself and therefore fall in price pretty quickly. Up next, let's talk about another card I think you guys should be dumping as soon as possible. It's the Black Goat Laughs. Now, Black Goat is actually a really strong card in the current format. Now, when you activate this as a trap card on the field, neither player can special summon a certain monster name unless it's from the graveyard. And then if you banish it from your graveyard, neither player can activate the effects of monsters on the field with that name. Now, this card is something that has seen a little bit of play over the last year or so. I think it was pretty common in Labyrinth because you could discard it with the furniture, but now the card has started to see even more play, mainly in the side deck, but sometimes even as a one-of in the main deck as well. So basically, you're using this card against Yummy Snatchy and stopping them from getting into their Link 1 onto the board. If they can't access Snatchy, they have an extremely hard time playing the game, since they would have to go into a different Link 1, and the Link 1s are their tuners, so they still could go into a synchro monster, but then if they don't get Snatchy into rotation, they can't synchro summon on the opponent's turn either, so this card can be extremely deadly against that matchup. Of course, in other matchups, it just sort of depends. Depending on the deck, you could stop your opponent from getting key cards onto the board, things like Holly Sue, Izuna, or Arthalion. With Black Goat Laughs, because it has seen more play recently, we've seen the card start to move up price-wise just a little bit. Over the last few months, it's stayed pretty steady around the $25 to $35 range, which is up from the $15 or so that it was at before. However, this card seems pretty high, especially because this card was already revealed and confirmed to be getting a reprint in the 2025 tins. Now that YCS Vancouver is over, we don't have any more big events really until YCS Anaheim, by which time the tins should have come out. That said, this is something that you guys should definitely consider moving pretty soon. If you're only going to be playing at your locals, you can definitely find another side deck or tech option to play instead, and then just buy this card back after it gets reprinted and has fallen in price considerably. I do want to take a second to remind all of you to check out our website, MSTmerch.com. Now, over at MSTmerch.com, we have everything that you will need to optimize your Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournament experience. We have the basics with white, black, pink, and our new purple matted sleeves, which are my personal favorites, as well as smooth and matted sleeves to double sleeve your valuable cards and sleeves with for tournament play. But we also have some other items that you can really use to customize your collection. We have amazing foil sleeves, including some with the MST.TV logo, and dividers and subdividers so that you can keep your collection perfectly organized and easily accessible. Regardless of if you're a competitive or casual player, I'm certain that you'll find something that you will enjoy over at MSTmerch.com. Moving on, we have Artifact Dagda. So Dagda is a pretty simple monster. This card last saw play when Halki Fibrax was in the game, where you would have Halk to tag into TG Wonder Magician and pop the Scythe that you set off Dagda, then use Scythe and Wonder Magician to make Baron. That was an absolutely insane combo. Well, we haven't seen Dagda as much since Scythe was banned, but it seems that this is actually starting to pop up in some builds that use the K9 cards. Basically, you're using Dagda to pull Artifact Mjolnir out of the deck, and then special summoning Mjolnir to your opponent's side of the field with Imperial Princess Quinqueri. This triggers Mjolnir's effect, which is mandatory and locks your opponent out of special summoning any monsters other than artifacts, so it's basically just a turn skip. All in all, I guess the combo is cute, though I doubt it's going to be seeing too much competitive success. It just requires you to run so many specific cards, and it's also extremely easy to disrupt. It really does just seem like the sort of thing that you bring to your locals to maybe cheese some people with, but that's about it. However, Artifact Dagda was only ever printed back in Dual Overload, which came out in 2020. Because of that, it has shot up in price recently. Nothing too crazy, but Dagda was around $2 and it's now up to between $6 and $7 per copy. With this one, I feel like Dagda is due to be reprinted at some point in the near future, but even then, there's a reason that Dagda is supposedly useful in this combo but still hasn't gotten that pricey, and it's because the combo just really isn't that great or reliable. I don't really see Dagda being useful until they either unban Scythe, which is hopefully never going to happen, or release some new artifact monsters, so Dagda might be a good card to let go of while it still has just the one printing. On to the next one, we have Artifact Durandal. So this is another artifact monster, but I believe the reason we're paying attention to this card is not because of artifacts at all. This is a generic rank 5 Xyz monster, so it is something that we're looking at making with the K9 cards. Basically, as a quick effect, you can either change your opponent's monster effect on the field or their normal spell and trap effect to destroy a spell or trap card that you control, or you can have both players shuffle their hand to the deck and then draw the same number of cards. So with this card, I believe it's something that is starting to catch on but hasn't seen too much competitive success yet. But it's primarily looked at as an extra deck option if you also happen to be playing Droll and Lockbird. Basically, if your opponent resolves a search card such as Reinforcements of the Army or Terraforming, you chain Durandal and then you chain Droll and Lockbird. This forces your opponent to shuffle their hand to the deck, but then they can't draw any cards, so you've just looped their entire hand. Now, unfortunately, I think this maybe isn't as strong of an option in something like Vanquish Soul K9, where you really need all of your attributes in your hand in order to play, because Durandal does make both players shuffle back their hand, and Droll will prevent both players from drawing. But in decks where you can throw more cards onto the field and don't need to hold on to cards in your hand, this can be a neat combo, maybe in something like Crystron K9. It's more like if you happen to see Droll when you're going first, or maybe even if you get Drolled yourself and you can't do too much more, you can just make a Durandal and get rid of all of their cards. Anyways, Durandal was reprinted in Justice Hunters itself, and it was also an Ultra in one of the Ghost from the Past sets, so accessibility isn't too big of an issue. Rather, it's the original Ultimate Rares from Primal Origin that have shot up in price. They've actually been doing nothing but going up over the course of the last year. These were at about $15 to $20 for a bit there, but in the last month or so, they've shot up to between $35 and $40 per copy. I don't know, with this one, it does seem a little bit gimmicky to me, but the K9 cards are also extremely popular, so maybe this is going to be a useful option. We just have to watch out for the next ban list, since a lot of people do think that Droll and Lockbird could be banned, and naturally that would kill off a lot of this card's value. Okay, so this is a bit of an odd one, but we have King Tiger Wang Hu. Now this is a really old card, having come out back in Pharaonic Guardian, but it's just a Floodgate monster, where any monster that's normal or special summoned with 1400 attack points or less is automatically destroyed. So this card is apparently seeing discussions as a side deck card to be used against Yummy, since Yummy isn't really able to start the game at all while Wang Hu is on the field. Obviously, it is extremely gimmicky and it does eat up your normal summon, but maybe this could see play in some Vanquish Soul decks since it's also an Earth monster, maybe with the new Tri-Brigade support coming out in Doom of Dimensions since Wang Hu is also a beast. Now, Wang Hu actually has a ton of different printings. Most of them are pretty low rarity, but we're slowly starting to see all of them go up to a couple of dollars each. This also actually has barely any holo printings. It was a super rare in one of the recent OTS tournament packs. Those are going for about $3 each now. And then randomly, its other holo printing was as a star foil, if you count that. Those are actually pretty hard to find and will cost you about $5 each. With this one, I don't know, it seems like an extremely specific card, but I guess if you really hate Yummy and you want to not give them a chance to play the game, you could try this, but there are other cards that people have been using that accomplish effectively the same thing. Cards like Power Filter and Ally of Justice Quarantine that basically do all of the same things or a little bit differently. I don't know, if you really hate Yummy that much, just pick your favorite floodgate to use to try to flush them out and try it out. Up next is a card I do want to take a look at quickly. It's Clockwork Knight. This time it's the spell card version. So this card is basically a floodgate. It turns all face-up monsters on the field to machines, and then it boosts yours and lowers the stats of your opponents. It does have another effect where you can search for any Earth machine, but that's generally not going to be all that relevant. So this card is getting more attention because of the Clockwork Knight Link 1 monster, since this card is searchable with the Link 1. Now this isn't something that's going to be useful in all matchups, but it's something that Crystron K9 aims to search for specifically in the Yummy matchup. Snatchy requires its material to be a beast monster, so this card shuts off access to Snatchy completely and basically stops Yummy from playing the game. It's a cool card, but it's something that only Crystron K9 is going to use since no other deck is realistically going to be able to make the Link 1 Clockwork Knight. Otherwise, you could also just play something like a DNA Surgery and accomplish somewhat the same thing. But yeah, I think that this card has been on people's radar for a little bit, but Yassine put this card in his side deck and managed to take it to the top 4 at YCS Vancouver, which is really impressive. Clockwork Knight was reprinted in Rarity Collection 3, so all of those lower rarity printings are going to be pretty easy to find. However, the QCR printing has gotten pretty pricey. This was a $7 to $8 card before, but the price has basically now doubled and it currently sits at $15 per copy on TCG Player. With this one, this is a card I would definitely try to offload now while it is seeing some hype, since it's only really going to be used by the one meta deck and will probably not see nearly as much play in future formats. Alright, finally, the last card we're taking a look at for today is Sol and Luna. Now this is sort of an interesting Book of Moon / Book of Taiyu. You take one of your monsters and one of your opponent's monsters. One goes from face up to face down and the other goes from face down to face up. So cards like Book of Moon and Book of Eclipse are potentially really disruptive cards since you can't use a face down monster for a Synchro, Xyz, or Link summon. However, Sol and Luna has the potential to be even stronger in the Aeneacraft deck, a pendulum flip monster strategy coming out in Phantom Revengers, since you could flip your opponent's monster face down as a disruption, as well as flip your own monster face up and trigger its effect. With this one, it's obviously a bit gimmicky, but I guess it's something that players are considering as a tech option. Anyways, this card got a reprint in Rarity Collection 2. That was around the time that Mimigul came out, so maybe Konami was thinking that this card could have seen play in there. It never did end up seeing play, and so Sol and Luna ended up being one of the more bulky QCRs from Rarity Collection 2. Now, however, this card is seeing hype once again and has seen a small bump, going from $1 before to now being $6 per copy. Now, early on in the OCG, I don't really believe that they're playing Sol and Luna in Aeneacraft builds. Even then, Aeneacraft isn't all that relevant at all. That said, this is probably going to fall off and go back down to being just another dollar card, so it's probably a good idea to move these for a few dollars while you still can. Alright guys, that is all I have for today's episode. Definitely a bunch of things that I think you guys should be trying to move off of if you absolutely can. I know that it's a bit of a weird time because we are still very early on in the format and feels like people are just discovering new techs all the time. But we have to keep in mind that those tins are coming. They're only about a month away and they're going to reprint a ton of different things. I think as you guys have seen from the reveals, they're not just reprinting the cards from that like cluster of 4 main sets and then a couple side sets. They're reprinting a lot of random things in there and we have no idea what is getting reprinted. So when cards go up in price, we want to try to move off of them as much as we can in order to mitigate our potential downside and take on as much value as we can while we can. Anyways guys, if you did enjoy today's Market Watch episode, please make sure you let me know by hitting that thumbs up button. Make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. And until next time guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.